Well, thank you, Janine. That made me cry. That was so beautiful. Thank you so much. Um, Good morning, beautiful BALLE. Um, we localists are mutualists, don't you think? So when I was working on my book, Good Morning, Beautiful Business, it occurred to me that our business networks are networks of relationships that could and sometimes do mimic the web of life of which we're a part. In my talk this morning, I'll give you a couple examples of this from my own business and from our business networks. And I can't say that I or any of us consciously mimic nature, but I do feel as though when we allow ourselves to hear our own internal wisdom, that our intuition will guide us towards working in alignment with nature, if we only open ourselves and allow us to do so. This is me at about 9 or 10 years old with my beagle dog, and this was my first love. And it was my relationship with my dog that really was my gateway into relationships with nature, with other four-legged, and really my connection with the natural world. And I feel like dogs, they're always in the present moment, and they help us to be in the present moment. And I feel like they're, in a way, our connection to the web of life. At least they have been for me. And I learned as a young child to see myself in my dog, and to see myself in nature up in the woods where I played, and eventually to be able to see myself in other people and to have empathy. So this is the place that I chose, not quite Montana, but an urban environment, the 3400 block of Sanson Street in Philadelphia. I started my business here. I moved here in 1972 and started my business in 1983. And I stayed here for 40 years. And this was the place that I took care of, the place that I loved, where I built a community and took responsibility for life on my block. So these are my two children, Grace and Lawrence. I raised my kids in the workplace. And I think when we live and work in the same community where work life and family life are interwoven, that we have, it makes us create different types of decisions that are more from the heart. And that when I made a decision about an employee, you know, I would think about the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. But also understanding that what we do unto others, we also do unto us, and that we are all interconnected. So for me, it was my connection to my employees that caused me to decide to pay a living wage for entry-level dishwashers. It was my connection to nature that led me to sign up for 100% renewable energy. It was a connection to my community that led me to start a mentoring program that we had for 15 years. A challenge I found in the business world is this business school truism, grow or die, that there's this paradigm that we measure our success by continual material growth. So I was often asked, well, aren't you going to have another white dog? How about one in New York City? Why not a chain of white dogs? But I felt like chains are like invasive species, that they go into other communities and are harmful to the indigenous local businesses. So I decided that I would look to see what did my community need instead of going to another community and starting another white dog, that I would start a black cat in my own community because we needed to have a store that sold locally made products and fair trade and products made from recycled materials. And probably our best BALLE example of that, oh, here's another picture of the inside of the of a black cat. Our best BALLE example of this is Zingerman's. Instead of doing a chain of Zingerman delis, the Zingermans created a family of businesses by starting a bakery, starting a creamery to make cheeses and yogurts, and starting a candy company and so on, until they have a whole family of businesses. And not only that, they made their best employees partners in the businesses, so they created more owners, another really important part of our movement. So for me, once I got to be financially sustainable, I decided to find other ways to grow, that we can grow by increasing our knowledge. We can grow by expanding our consciousness, by deepening our relationships, by developing our creativity, building community, and having more fun. So I grew deeper in my own community, having table talks on issues like climate change or drug policy reform. There's Patch Adams at a breakfast talk. We had storytellings giving voice to underrepresented groups, in this case, gay marriages, same-sex marriage, a lesbian couple and a gay couple. We did tours of inner-city gardens, of prisons, affordable housing tours, many annual events. This was a Freedom Seder. This was our Martin Luther King celebration. The very first special event of many, many hundreds I did was a Martin Luther King dinner that we had every year for over 20 years, and it was the last event that I held before I sold the restaurant in 2009. So what I realized is that the way that I grew, instead of growing like an invasive species, I grew by becoming more complex, creating more complexity, in my own place, in my own ecosystem. That I became more diverse and more resilient, more adaptive to the needs of my own community in my own ecosystem. And of course, having more fun was always a really important thing to do in our community. And this was one of my favorite events that we had on the eve of 4th of July, our Liberty and Justice for All Ball. And after we had a dinner of farm fresh foods, I did a little skit called Birth of a Nation. First comes a Revolutionary War fellow playing his drum. Then I come out as a pregnant a colonial woman with my midwife. I have this written on my back, George Washington slept here. I'm helped into my bed. And then my midwife is delivering my baby, and I secretly push the beach ball down through a hole in the bed. Out comes my first twin. Out comes my second twin. Liberty and Justice, and they hop on the stage and do a tap dance, a Yankee Doodle Dandy. Then we wheel out the Statue of Liberty, light our sparklers, and sing God Bless America. So this is the kind of fun that we can have in our own communities, in our own places, that many think that in order to have fun, we have to spend a lot of carbons and a lot of money to go to exotic places. But who needs Hawaii when you can dance in the street with your own community? So one of the most important experiences that I had was spending time with the Zapatistas in Chiapas, Mexico. I went down there as part of our sister restaurant program to find out why the Zapatistas had their uprising on the day that NAFTA went into effect on January 1st, 1994, and found that they predicted that when NAFTA lowered the boundaries of Mexico, it would allow U.S. subsidized corn, subsidized by our farm bill, to be dumped into Mexico, forcing out of business the Mexican corn farmers, which is exactly what did happen and caused a great immigration of Mexicans to the United States. What the Zapatistas were calling for was local self-reliance, and this is something I never really thought about at this point in my life. This was in the early 90s. They wanted to have local self-reliance to be able to grow their corn as they had grown for thousands of years, and to be able to grow fruits and vegetables to feed their families. They wanted to maintain their own culture and not be sucked into the monoculture, the corporate monoculture of Western-style living. They wanted to teach their children in their own languages and in their own cultures. they wanted their women to be able to make the clothes in the way that they had done for so many centuries, rather than being forced to work in maquiladoras to make cheap clothes for export to the United States. So when I was there, I thought I had gone to Chiapas to help the Zapatistas, but I realized that I was really going to help my own community, to help all of us. And I began to draw the connection between the farmers in Mexico and the farmers in Pennsylvania. That just like in Chiapas, our own farmers were being driven from our land by our policies that favored large corporate farms. And so I could see that what we needed to do was to create a new economy, that around the world, local economies were being destroyed, and we were all becoming dependent on large corporations to bring us our basic needs, our food, our energy, our clothes, our building materials, rather than becoming self-reliant. So I envisioned a new global economy that, rather than being controlled by these large corporations moving things all around the world, that it would be a delicate, intricate network, of small to small, connecting self-reliant local economies where basic needs were made at home. And then we traded globally in things that we didn't have at home and things that were unique to our own community, a new fashion, a new design, a really great wine. And that's what led to my co-founding with Laurie Hamill, BALLE. And BALLE also, like nature, is not a top-down organization. We're a bottoms-up organization. We are based up of self-organized local business networks. And we have decentralized relationships. So meanwhile, back at home, I was building a business network of local farmers that were supplying the White Dog Cafe and reestablishing the trade routes from the rural areas into the city that had been abandoned when all of our local food was being exported to large corporations for processing into junk food. So I knew the importance of buying pastured chickens, and we did, and eggs from uncaged hens. But it wasn't until the 1990s that I read John Robbins' book, Diet for a New America, and found out about the horrendous way that mother sows are kept in the industrial system, that we lock these mother sows in these cages where they can't even turn around or move forward or backward. They're artificially inseminated. The baby's taken away prematurely, artificially inseminated again, as though they were pieces of machinery in a factory, never feeling sunlight or a breeze. They're very intelligent animals, they say, as intelligent as a 3-year-old child, and also very social. They like to sleep in big pig pals. And so I felt that, that these are mammals like us, like our dogs, that we've seen on the faces of our dogs, all the emotions that mammals are capable of, joy, grief, guilt if they steal a little sausage off the table. So here we are keeping these mammals in these cages in such a horrible way, and I felt that this was a betrayal of nature to treat these mothers in this way, and really a betrayal of our role as stewards of farm animals that we're responsible for. So I realized with horror that the pork I must be serving at the White Dog Cafe was coming from the system, because 95% of the pork in our country does. And so I went into the kitchen and said, take all the pork off the menu. We can't be a part of this horrible, brutal system, the bacon, the pork chops, the ham. And so we went about finding sources for pastured pork. And here's a picture of a big mother sow with her babies in the nest, and pictures of the pigs enjoying the mud and each other. Then I found out about the plight of the cow, how cows are herbivores and should be out on pasture eating grass. They're a wonderful example of how you can turn grass into meat, into milk, and yet we feed them grain because it's cheaper, again, because of our farm bill subsidizing the wheat and the soybean and the corn farmers. It's cheaper to take the cows off grass and put them in stockyards or in barns. So we ended up finding a grass-fed beef farmer. This is Dr. Bill Elkins, and transferred to all grass-fed beef. This is Dougie Newbald. She says that when she kisses her goat's ears, it makes the cheese better. So I realized that I looked at my menu and I thought, well, gee, I finally done it. I have a humane menu. All of our meat and poultry and eggs and so on come from small family farms, and this is going to be our market niche. This is our competitive advantage. I thought, well, this is all about us. But then my transformational moment came. I realized that if I really did care about the animals, if I really did care about the small farmers being driven out of business, if I really did care about the environment where the pollution from 10,000 pigs in one barn was destroying the water systems and the air and the soil, if I really cared about the workers in these factory farms and slaughterhouses, and if I cared about the consumers that were eating meat that was full of antibiotics and hormones, then rather than keep this as my proprietary information, that I would share this knowledge with my competitors. And that was my me to we moment, because I realized that there's no such thing as one sustainable business, that we can only be part of a sustainable system. And in order to build that sustainable system, we had to cooperate, including with our competitors. So I asked Glenn, the farmer, this was at the Dance of the Ripe Tomatoes, but I asked Glenn, who was bringing us in 2 pigs a week, if he wanted to expand his business, and he said yes. And I said, well, what's holding you back? And he said he needed $30,000 to buy a refrigerated truck. So I loaned him the $30,000. And then I started putting 20% of my profits into a nonprofit, White Dog Community Enterprises, and started Fair Food, which is a nonprofit now 12 years old, that helps link farmers with the urban marketplace and many other programs at this point. And I also started the Sustainable Business Network of Greater Philadelphia, which of course is a BALLE network. So within our network, we began to see ways that we could work together and use each other's waste. And one of the wastes in the restaurant business is fry oil. So Farmer Glenn started picking up the fry oil from all the restaurants and using the fry oil to heat his greenhouse, and to drive his tractor, and to drive his car, and to heat his house. So he went off the grid just using fry oil. Also with composting, we didn't have enough room to compost at the White Dog, but the University of Pennsylvania was right behind us, and they agreed to give us a space for an earth tub. So I organized the other restaurants on our block, and each of us has one of those green containers that we put our compost in, and then we put it into the earth bin. And that's, we hired mutually a person to help us that turns the earth bin to make compost. Here's another great example of this on Harwick, Vermont. This is Tom Stearns, who has a company called High Mowing Seeds. And he was growing these great organic vegetables and then taking the seeds out and then sold the seeds. That was his business, and throwing the vegetables onto the compost. But he started meeting with a group of other food entrepreneurs in Harwick, and they started to give each other bridge loans and shared tools and storage space and so on. And they realized that there was a food company that could use those vegetables. So he started making purees, like a squash puree, out of the vegetables after Tom took the seeds out. And he started making pickles from some of the cucumbers. And then Tom started using the heat from a compost business that was next to him to heat his greenhouses. And in return, he did trials of compost for the compost company in his greenhouse. So all of this wouldn't take place if they weren't in close proximity, if they weren't in the same ecosystem. By having small businesses working together, there's many ways where we can learn to share each other's waste, just as nature does. So at SBN, Sustainable Business Network in Philadelphia, one of the ways we began to learn was we created these building blocks of food, clothing, in this case, sustainable landscape, and started teaching each other. And I didn't know anything about sustainable landscape until one of our members had a lecture about, and this was his front yard, and about how sustainable landscapes are a diversity of plants where there's plenty of rooms for the bugs and other creatures to live. And here's an example of an unsustainable landscape where there's no place for the bugs and the animals to live. I started to see, how this is an example of what Vandana Shiva calls eco-apartheid, where we separate ourselves from nature with these air-conditioned houses and these big lawns. And so, by contrast, this is a real diversity, like a jumble of beautiful plants. And this all made me begin to realize how we, in our lives and other parts of our lives, we separate by the way we do housing, by these monocrops for planting foods, by taking all of our chickens that are all the same into these factory farms, or living in these high-rises that are separated by and segregated by class and by wealth. But here I found that what we do, this is a picture of SBN up in the woods having our retreat, and it occurred to me that what we're doing in our local living economy movement is overcoming this separation, that we're knitting together a world that had become fragmented and lonely into one that's inclusive and joyful and strong in its diversity, that local economies are reconnecting work life with family life and reconnecting us with shopkeepers, with the farmers who grow our food, with the dress designers who make our clothes, with the carpenters and makers who make our furniture and houses, and as Don Schaefer likes to say, connecting the lenders with the borrowers. So, and the good thing is that this is really fun, that we call this creating the Merry Mecca, that there's a lot of collective joy that comes from working together toward a shared vision for our economy and our community. So that is one of the things that we all do have in common, that all of nature wants to take care of our young places, to make our young people, to make our places safe and happy for those that we love. And it's the power of love that can bring transformative change. And I believe that if we open our hearts and we feel our connection with nature and with each other and hear our own internal wisdom, that our intuition will guide us toward building a world that's healthy for our children and for the children of all species. Thank you. Thank you.
I did say 2 hot mamas, didn't I? Thank you, Janine. Thank you, Judy. I don't know about you, but I can't stop crying. So touching. From me to we. Nature. Sharing information with a competitor. Overcoming separation. Mutualism. Ecosystem awareness. We've just taken in a lot, so we're going to take a moment to reflect. When you take in so much information and such mind-blowing information, it can be a bit overwhelming, and you just need a minute. So we're going to take 5. What we're going to ask you to do is, I mentioned these lovely cards last night. We're harvesting, we're taking down your notes, your ideas, the actions you want to take back to your home. And we're going to put those together in a convergence session on Friday. And so here's an activity that you can do based on this session so far. I want you to think about what you just heard and ask yourself, what difference are you going to make? How did the presentation from Judy and Janine change your perspective? What do you want to bring home? I'm going to take 5 minutes to reflect on that, and I'm going to ask you to either write it up here on your card that we'll put on the harvesting board, or to tweet it out at #BALLE 2013. And take the time for yourself. So, what difference are you going to make? What did these presentations add to your perspective? Take your time.
All right, can you hear me?
Go ahead, try it now.
Yeah. Can you hear me? How are you?
Yeah.
That's great. I got a little support. I'm going to give it a little extra room here.
Yeah.
We're looking good?
Yeah. That's
Okay,
good.
great.
Okay, so just click it off now. And then I'll,
It does not matter. Feel free to use whichever color. Okay, 2 more minutes. Okay, we're going to wrap up. So I'm delighted to introduce our next 2 speakers on this journey of Me to We. Next up is Nipun Mehta, who is the founder of Karma Kitchen Restaurants and of Service Space in Berkeley, California. He's working on the intersection of volunteerism, technology, and the gift economy, and has a heart as big as this room. And after we hear from Nipun, we'll hear from our very own Michelle Long. Nipun?
Hello, everyone. Oh, loud and echo-full hello. Thank you. I'm honored to be here. So I get excited about local, like all of you, because local is about community, and community is about relationships. But not all relationships are made equal. Right? You have the loose, sort of shallow ties. You have the deep ties. And then you have these profound, noble connections that we sometimes run into if we're lucky. So what is it about, what is it about these relationships, and how can we create these deeper ties? So what I want to talk about today is this bridge between local and love. One of the tireless champions of this was a man named Gandhi. In this photo, he is with, this is J.C. Kumarappa. He's often known as the Schumacher of India, this amazing economist. Kumarappa lived a very simple life. In the last 7 years of his life, he was in a one-room cottage. Cottage didn't have much, had 2 photos, and people would visit him from all over the world. So one time, a delegation of these 15 Harvard Business School professors visit him, and they are seeking his counsel. They look on his wall and they say, well, sure enough, there's those 2 photos. Someone says, that's a photo of Gandhi. And Kumarappa says, yes, indeed. That's my teacher. And then someone looks up and says, oh, but on top of that, there's a photo of a poor, ordinary villager. And Kumarappa turns to them and says, yes, that was my teacher's teacher. Incredible. So Gandhi paid homage to the common man. And what he learned being a student of the common man was that people universally respond to love. His whole movement was based on this entire principle that we have goodness in us and that we respond to goodness outside of us. That was the basis. That is how he shook the history, not just of India, but of the planet. So what brings us together, there are many things that bring us together. You know, earlier this week, this is Apple's 13th Worldwide Developer Conference, and all these people got together, and they said, well, what's the latest iPhone update, and what's the MacBook Pro upgrade? Like, people would camp out for days. I mean, people would get pretty excited about this stuff. And it creates a kind of community. But there's so many vested interests. It's not that deep. This is a photo of a tribe in a hill station, an indigenous tribe. Now, these guys are coming together, and they're really just celebrating their connection. They come together in a circle. None of them are on Facebook, you know. None of this gets counted on the GDP. They have no vested interest. And as a result, it creates a much deeper bond. Right? So when people come together for love, we create much more resilient communities. I learned this through Karma Kitchen that we alluded to. I don't know how many of you guys know about Karma Kitchen, but it's a restaurant. This is the Berkeley location in particular. That feels like a regular restaurant. You walk in, you have a meal, and you feel great. Except, at the end of your meal, your check looks like this: 0. It's 0 because someone before you paid for your meal, and you are trusted to pay forward for people after you. And most people, especially the economists, scratch their heads. They're like, you mean you just trust people to pay forward? Does it work out? And that's a reasonable question. What they're really asking is, okay, you've been doing it for 4 years in all these locations, and does it really work out? What they really are asking for is like, oh, does it financially sustain itself? Now, the answer is yes, and you have a lot of top business schools now studying this. But that's a cheap question for a cheap answer. Because the real deeper question is, how can you create a space of generative generosity? So you walk into Karma Kitchen, and the maitre d' explains the concept. Now, sometimes people are just in tears just hearing this concept. Right? You go on the left, you might see, this is actually in Berkeley, you might see a kindness table. All these gifts from the local community, none of them with a price tag. You see this restaurant, right? 65 people are all like dining, having a great time, full of smiles, and no one is paying for themselves. Everyone is paying for each other. And you might have 30 people waiting outside. It just kind of creates this ambiance. When you get to your table, you might see a little bit of good news under your countertop, right? You might have a positive quote, gets you in that mode. We have theme for the day where people reflect in between while they're waiting for their food. And then the food comes out. Now, because this is volunteer run, people are moved to do all kinds of things. Maybe you have to put peas on top of your rice. And maybe they just come out in this heart shape. And it just sort of makes your day, right? They don't have to do that, but they do. And then you might hear somebody like Elijah say, hey, I want to offer up a song. And people are strumming, and it just kind of creates this whole ambiance. The server might come out and say, look, here's a smile deck. It's a deck of cards, and each card has a kindness idea. And I think the organizers have arranged for gifts for everyone outside of these smile decks. Now, kids get particularly excited. Oh, you mean I have to do one? I pick any one? I wonder which one I'll draw. You know, and they pick one, and they get excited, but they start thinking about kindness. Not just thinking, but biochemically, their body starts responding to kindness even before they've done the act. And then the servers. The servers are, you know, we tell them, look, go out and do crazy acts of love. Right? Yes, you have to deal with the logistics, but go out and do crazy acts of love. This is a teenager, 19-year-old, walks in, and someone says, a guest says, you know, I really like your T-shirt. Now, this guy says, where can I buy one? And he says, well, this is a Karma Kitchen T-shirt, and we don't sell anything. So you really have to volunteer to get one of these. Right? But then he goes inside, borrows somebody else's T-shirt, takes his own off, goes to this table, and what you can't read over there is he packages it up like that with a little smile card, and it says, kindly wash before use. I mean, literally, you walk into a restaurant, and the guy's taking the T-shirt off his back, right? It's fair game here. I remember a first-time volunteer walking in. He himself was doing his PhD in computer science at UC Berkeley. He was himself testing out this idea of a gift economy. What the heck is this? So he's serving at a table, and this guy says, you mean so you just trust me to pay forward? And he's like, yeah, I think that's how it works, right? So he's thinking about it. How much do I leave? Right? How much is this worth? How much is that empathy worth to me? Not just the food. And people start, it's a very difficult question for some people in some contexts. And so he's thinking about it. A couple minutes later, he calls this guy and he says, okay, you trust me, right? And he says, yes, I do. And he says, well, here's 100. I trust you to bring me back whatever change you want. And now this guy's like, tides are turned. What are you going to do? So here's this PhD guy trying to rack his brains around gift economy, and now it's like turned back on him. So he doesn't know what to do. He's pacing back and forth. He comes back and he says, and I was there at the restaurant, so I saw his confusion. And then he does something amazing, which is result of this generative space of generosity. He takes out his wallet, takes out a 20, goes back to the guy, and he says, sir, this is your 100 and an extra 20. The guy is just shaking. He's like, oh my God, what is happening here? And this, if you try to replicate this anywhere else, it just wouldn't work. It may not even make sense. How do you create that? But this is the generative nature of a space that is held with generosity. And you notice as you're leaving, you might notice and you look back and say, wow, these are all volunteers. They could have been at home on a Sunday morning, just relaxing, vegetating. Instead, they're here volunteering to do my dishes, to bus my table. It's incredibly powerful. So silence in between the notes creates music. We know this, but it is the space in between people that creates community, not just people alone, because there's so much going on in between, even in this very moment. So service space is the organization that holds such kinds of projects. Karma Kitchen is one of our projects. We have dozens of projects like that. And really, we hold space. Right? We hold space for these values of service, to shift from consumption to contribution, from transaction to trust, from isolation to community, from scarcity to abundance. Right? These are all values we all care about, but here we created a container. We started in 1999 in the Silicon Valley, and we said, all these saints are always telling us it isn't giving that you receive. Well, let's double down on it. Let's just give. And so we put a bunch of constraints. One of the constraints was we're not going to fundraise at all. I mean, if it isn't giving you receive, let's see if we receive. And we said, well, okay, then how are we going to build institutional capacity? So we said, well, let's bootstrap, Okay, you can give 5 hours, you can give 5 hours, let's add it all up. And we were a bunch of really smart technologists, were part of our crew, and we said, well, let's add them up. And you could do that with internet technologies. And now people giving small amounts were aggregated into something that gave us institutional capacity to go out and do things in the world, the problems in the world that money couldn't solve. There are many such things. So we held space in 3 primary arenas. One was online. More than half of the world is under 30. And they are using online technology. So we do things like this portal called Daily Good, sends out a little bit of good news. Good news, very hard to monetize. We run a portal called KarmaTube, inspiring Be the Change videos. We also hold space offline. Now, Karma Kitchen is an example of something that happens in a very systematic way, but you can also do a lot of ad hoc things. Like this is Mother's Day, last month. This is Scott and I and a whole bunch of people. We just went up on the streets of Berkeley and we said, honk for your moms, smile, smile. And maybe the first intersection, you're like, okay, well, who are these people? Right? But the second intersection, you see a whole bunch of these people saying smile and you're just like cracking a smile, And by the third intersection, you're like, God, I don't even know why I'm smiling, but you're smiling. Right? That's just what it does. And this is distributed impact. No one is going to fund this kind of stuff, but we don't need funding for this kind of stuff. We just need a whole lot of love. And then lastly, the inner space. This is Kung Fu Panda, inner peace. How do you hold that inner space? What is that inner transformation? When you do a small act of kindness, we have these smile cards, right? Just like the smile deck, there's a smile card where you go out and let's say I live on the 4th floor. You pick up your neighbor's trash. And when you pick it, I'm going down anyway, so and I have 2 hands, might as well carry his trash. And I leave a little smile card. It says, you don't know who did this. You can't pay back, but you can pay forward. Keep the chain going. Lo and behold, it so happened that on our own floor, one time I had some boxes outside, and they were gone, and there was a smile card. Right? So now on our own little floor, there's all these people doing all these, and no one knows that I'm connected to smile cards at all. It's like the most classic thing. I love it. But the transformation is not just external, though. See, that's the story we tell ourselves because there's an inner ripple effect along with the external. And that inner ripple effect is so powerful because it changes the lens through which we look at the world. But this has edges. Right? Online is really great for building awareness. This is a photo, this is a snapshot. Facebook releases all this data on the number of people that create friendships across warring regions, conflicting regions. So this is India and Pakistan over the last 24 hours. This is not yesterday, but in a 24-hour snapshot that I took, 476,000 people became friends across these regions. That's great. But these are also loose ties. I don't know if you've heard of this guy, Santiago Swallow. Internet celebrity, has been at TED, South by Southwest. He's a futurist coming out with a book. And as you can see, he's got 85,000 Twitter followers. And if you're famous on Twitter, you get that little check next to your name. You're verified. Except, fake. The guy who made him up wrote a little article, says how I became internet famous for $68. There are places where you can just, for $50, you can buy 50,000 followers. There are tools out there that just automatically tweet like nonsensical sentences, and people say, wow, that's deep. This guy doesn't exist, but we have no way to verify that. So online is great for awareness, but it's also got serious edges. Offline is great for impact. Right? We know lots of models. I don't need to speak about these models here. This is Tom Shoes, says, if you buy a pair of shoes, we'll give one to those who don't have shoes. That sounds like a great model and a great thing to do. Right? Because if you don't have shoes, you step over glass, you're going to get hurt. Until you run across these guys. This is the Tarahumara Indians. The Tarahumara Indians in Mexico were invited to an ultra-marathon race in the mid-90s. And they walk up to the front line, and all these people are ready for, like in the scorching heat of Death Valley, 100 miles. I mean, that's a lot. And these guys have got these little homemade flip-flops. They're like, you can't be serious, right? But they were. And they start running. Everyone else starts running. Sunset. They're like, oh, they stop. They look at the sun. And people are like, you're in the middle of a race, man. What are you doing? Oh, we're paying respect to Father-Son. That's what we always do. And they're like, okay, we don't know who those guys are, except that at the finish line, they finished first. Except next year, they broke the world record. And now, there's a whole bunch of people saying, these shoes, they really give me knee injuries. Barefoot running is the thing to do. So now you have these vibrant, I can't even tell if they're like shoes or socks, but those things that you see everywhere, well, you, of course, managed to commoditize that too. But really, it's these guys. So you look at our world and we say impact, but we have to look at the impact of impact as well. Cheap questions lead to cheap answers, but we sometimes have to ask ourselves very difficult questions. But both of this is not enough. The third space is transformation. Right? And I think there's so much research now that tells us you have to take care of what goes on the inside. You have to take care of your mind. And when you take care of your mind, you can do so many things on the outside. Right, that are incredible. You have these Marines meditating, but of course, this is also an edge because you have people now saying, oh, somewhere I'll bet there's a cooler infinity I can be with. And that kind of stuff can also get self-obsessive. So it's an edge just to do transformation. But what is interesting about these three spheres, right? Awareness tells you, look, here's what your lungs look like when you smoke. That's not going to change your behavior. Impact tells you, here's a nicotine patch. It'll wean you off of cigarettes. But it is transformation that gets you out of the pattern of addiction. And if you look at these three circles, each one by itself has edges, but the sweet spot in between is very interesting. It's interesting because when you study the social change leaders, certainly that I admire, and that I would say have created sustainable change in the world, like these guys, from Gandhi, Mother Teresa, Martin Luther King, Dalai Lama, Cesar Chavez, Aung San Suu Kyi, you can go down the list, they work at the sweet spot in between. And they lead with transformation. When you lead with transformation, awareness and impact are inevitable. If you start with awareness and impact, you may or may not get to transformation. Very important. So, I should call this the Gandhi 3.8. I don't know. This is the model. So we live now in a world where it's no longer Gandhi 1.0, which was one of Gandhi and many of us, right? One to many. Then we had the Peace Pilgrim model, right? Various places all over the world where it was one-to-one. She just kept walking, and she connected with people one-on-one. much stronger network. And now what we have is what we see in nature, many to many. And when you ask scientists to look at that, they tell you this is the hub and spoke model 1.0, this is Gandhi 2.0, and as you can see, the power of 3.0. That's the world we're in. We face unprecedented challenges, but as we face these challenges, we have unprecedented capacities to create these solutions. We can organize in a Gandhi 3.0 way. This is ecosystem. This is more of an echo chamber, can be an echo chamber. Ecosystem, that is ecosystem. So my friend Adam Grant at Wharton has summed it up in a really nice way. He says there are three kinds of people: takers, people who take; matchers, who say, look, if you're a taker, I'm going to put my boundaries. If you're a giver, I'm going to give to you. And then givers. But what we really want to do is apply the Gandhi 3.0 model to this. But we're not going to do it through a business plan. We're not going to do it as a function of our will. This stuff works in a very different way. It works the way nature does. You don't plant a tree and say, look, it's Wednesday. I watered you 2 days in a row. Why aren't you coming out? Right? You have to plant the seeds and trust. Right? It's an incredible way. It's a very different way of thinking, but it's an incredible way of being. I learned this from my parents. This is my mom and dad, and this is their shoe rack on Wednesdays. Every Wednesday outside our home, this is what happens. Now, about 16 years ago, we decided, my mom, myself, and another person, my dad joined a year later, he was in the back room at the time, and we said, look, we want to meditate. Let's just sit for an hour, listen to ourselves. Just once a week, we did that. And then in the second hour, we said, well, we'll just share aha moments and do a little circle of sharing. We listened to other people in the second hour. And then my mom says, I got to feed you anyway, so, well, whoever comes, we'll let them join us. And lo and behold, it's been going on every single Wednesday for the last 16 years. Right? All these people doing it, and now my mom actually grows. On some of the Wednesdays, like 80% of the food comes from our own backyard. It's an incredible thing, but it's so incredible because they have changed through that process. A lot of people will come and say, thank you so much for doing this. And my mom will say, no, thank you. And they're like, what do you mean? I can come Thursday too, And they said, no, thank you for the opportunity to be of service because I transformed myself through that. And people will come and say, hey, man, what's your plan? Like, what are you trying to do? And he said, we don't have a plan. Like, great, it's spread to 62 cities around the world, but even if it's 61 or 63, that's not what it's about. For us, it's about being with you in this moment. And our job is just to confuse you with gratitude. You leave that doorstep with a little bit extra, with a little bit extra umph in your step, with a little bit more faith in the goodness of humanity, and we know that somewhere your cup of gratitude is going to overflow, and wherever it overflows is also our home. And they're not just saying that because it's 16 years, every single Wednesday, feeding our capacity of 65 people every single week. That's my mom, and we don't have a big house. We're not rich, right? But these people are just opening up their hearts, and you can see the transformation that happens, and you can see how deep these connections are. Not just because they're serving, but they're holding space from this deep transformative spirit within them. So I want to conclude with this famous quote that you've all heard of by Gandhi. It says, "You must be the change you wish to see in the world." Now, this is very interesting. Because Gandhi didn't say, you must preach the change you wish to see in the world so you can create awareness. No, Gandhi didn't say that. Gandhi didn't say you must manifest the change you wish to see in the world because we need impact. No, Gandhi didn't say that. Gandhi said you must be the change you wish to see in the world because he knew that when you lead with transformation, you create a whole different solution set for yourself and for the world. So I hope we all be the change, spread the love inside out, and I thank you for your attention. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yay. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
I'm about to burst. I feel like my heart is about to burst. So have some water. I have something to say. I have something to say, and I still feel like the words are hard to find. I can't believe I'm crying before you starting. It's getting ridiculous. Thanks. I feel like I have something that I know, and I don't know how the words to make it. So this quote was good for me. Where the lips are silent, the heart has 100 tongues. I felt like, well, if I could play you some music, but I'm not a musician, or if I, if I had a moment with each of you, if I could, look in your eyes and touch you, but that would take a while. So I'm going to try to, use words, but bear with me because I'm inarticulate. I thought the best thing I could do is to show you a picture to start. This picture has been with me for about a year. It came to me in kind of a vision that said that this is what we're supposed to nurture right now in business, this vibration, this emotion. To me, it's this little girl, and it looks to me like she's heartbroken. She is experiencing a lot of pain. Maybe this is maybe her pet, and this little rat looks like it's dead. And I have a daughter, and I can see that her little fingers are curled as with tenderness to hold him so gently and so carefully. But she's what is the emotion that it needs nurtured is that through the pain, she's still open. She's looking up through her bangs. She's expecting people to be there for her. And that's what I feel like we have to nurture right now in ourselves as people who run businesses and those who support them. Lynn Twist said, what you appreciate, appreciates. Where you put your energy, that's what grows. Can we, as we face more difficult times ahead, climate change, through dwindling natural resources, can we stay open to each other? Here's a word that's not English that helps. Maybe it's a step toward what I'm trying to say. It's a Japanese word, yugen. It means a profound, mysterious sense of the beauty of the universe and the sad beauty of human suffering. Examples are to watch the sun sink behind a flower-clad hill, to contemplate the flight of wild geese seen and lost amongst the clouds, that feeling. Amazing, there's a word for it. This is recently on a beach near where I live. I was with my daughter, and she found this and showed it to me. I've never known this. This is the bottom of a sand dollar, an alive sand dollar. I've only seen them dead and fossilized, and I didn't realize the bottom, there were thousands of tentacles, each one with a spark of light, and I was in awe of the mystery of life, and then seeing her run. That's my daughter running across thousands of sand dollars, and she's growing, and it's here now, and it's fading at the same time, and it's fragile, and it's awesome. I slept under the stars on Friday night with my daughter. This was her. She's about to turn 9, and on Friday she had her last day of 3rd grade, and we celebrated with triple chocolate cake at a local business called Pure Bliss. And then she and I slept under the stars. And we laid there as it was turning gray, and then the first star came out, and then the second star came out, and then there were 4 stars that came, and then it was on, there were stars. And we lay there, and I was talking to her about being this little blue marble floating out in space. And she really liked that idea, and I was also, though, really struck with just the fragility of that thin little atmosphere around us, the paper-thin ozone that protects us. The Economist, you guys probably all saw that this year. There was the Welcome to the Anthropocene from The Economist on the cover. We are now, as humankind, dominating our global ecosystem. And The Economist said, to think that the works of so vast an entity as the Earth could be lastingly changed by a species that has been scampering across its surface for less than 1% of its history seems on the face of it absurd, but it's not. Humans have become a force of nature, reshaping the planet on a geological scale, but at far faster than geological speed. And, we all know our friend Bill McKibben and 350 parts per million. That's the safe level of carbon dioxide in our atmosphere. And, we just blew past 400 recently, and now, there's talk of tipping points and Greenland's ice melting, and then the permafrost putting methane into the ozone and rapidly getting to 450, and then what? Then the oceans acidify and the coral reefs dissolve, and it's just all here, and it's all fragile, and it could happen fast. And I think no matter what, things are going to get harder on planet Earth. It's just true. We can mourn that. We should mourn that. And I guess what I'm trying to say is, how are we going to respond? Are we going to try to hoard whatever piles we have and put up bigger walls to everybody else, pull up ladders from those behind us, or are we going to, in the face of pain, turn to each other with openness? Our friend John Fullerton said, one truth emerges as an organizing principle for our response to the arrival of the Anthropocene: interdependence. We're all in this together. Last night, Otto said this: we live in a moment of disruption, death, and rebirth. What's dying is an old civilization and mindset of maximum me. What's being born is less clear, but is in no way less significant. It's a future that requires us to tap into a deeper level of our humanity, of who we really are and who we want to be as a society. It's a shift that requires us to expand our thinking from the head to the heart. It's a shift from ecosystem awareness that cares about the well-being of me to an ecosystem awareness that cares about the well-being of all, including myself. I went to a Presencing Institute that Otto put on last year, and I was so moved by what he said. Usually you always hear people talk about the economic challenges, the community challenges, the environmental challenges, but he also talked about the spiritual challenges that we're facing. He said that right now the leading cause of death, ahead of war and homicide put together on our planet, according to the World Health Organization, is suicide. So many people feel a lack of meaning and purpose. And that is beyond painful, too. That is beyond painful, too. And because of that, over the last 2 decades, there's been this big body of research into wellness. What does make us well? What does make us happy? And what's coming back, summarized by my friend Dwayne Elgin, and he said, regardless of political orientation, regardless of geography, regardless of ethnicity, regardless of age, there are 4 things that make us all well, actually, as humans. 4 things that make us well as humans. Those are, 1, when we feel in our purpose, when we feel like our life has meaning. We feel well. Secondly, when we feel generous. When we've been generous, like Nipun was just talking about, we feel well. We feel well when we feel connected to each other, to our community. And we feel well when we feel connected to the natural world. Those 4 things, that's what makes us deeply and truly well, all of us. And the fact that that is a commonality actually bodes well, that there's a chance we could reorient our economic systems toward what actually makes us well. And that's the thing. This is a picture I have on my kitchen wall. It's a painting, and there's a quote from Hafiz, a 13th century Sufi, and it says, first, the fish needs to say, something ain't right about this camel ride, and I'm feeling so damn thirsty. My daughter always says that with a thick southern accent, and I'm feeling so damn thirsty. Anyway, it's, this is it, so the fish he's just going along in the hot sun on the camel, like, I'm taking a ride in the desert, and it's hot. He's eventually got to say, this is so wrong. I am completely miserable. I am so uncomfortable. I'm a fish. Why am I under hot sun riding a camel in the desert?
So we have to say, collectively, what is being called for is no less than a realignment with what actually does make us happy, what actually does make us well. I hope that my voice is clear enough here, what I'm trying to say. There is no way forward except for then to actually remember what it is that we really want, and then stand courageously for that, even in the face of cultural pressures, pain, unrest. What we heard from Otto last night, ecosystem to ecosystem awareness, or from every speaker this morning, me to we. I just went to, I don't know where all those slides, there were a bunch of pictures on this, but they're not there. So there's one picture. But I just got back from Bhutan, where I was with Otto and with Eileen Fisher and with a few other people here, Sasha, Infonet. Bhutan is a little country in the Himalayas, and you probably have all heard by now they track their progress with the GNH, a Gross National Happiness Index, rather than a GDP, trying to measure progress around what really matters. And they're not a perfect country, but it's incredible what they've done to bring, as a small country, to the global stage, at the UN level, the idea that we should be measuring something that matters, our well-being and our happiness. And I found, for one, there a kind of a sweetness, words again escape me, but a kind of a sweetness, an integration that, we're in danger of losing. And so much I'd want to say, but Dr. Isabel Sebastian, who's there studying GNH and how it could apply to business, I found it fascinating what she's found. So this first column is what I said before, how Dwayne said that all the research of the past 2 decades as to what makes us well, aligning to we feel well in these 4 buckets. And then Isabel Sebastian said, business is applying the GNH principles that have been developed over the last 20 years, 30 years in Bhutan, would support evolving individuals toward humanity at its best, or other words, to help people feel in their purpose. Businesses applying GNH would operate with a principle of enough, using any excess to increase well-being widely when we've been generous. She said that they would focus on activities that drive community vitality, green their products and operations. It just lined up exactly with the research about what actually makes us well. And then Yuxin, who was a participant on this journey with us, a young Chinese academic who had broken English. I have no Chinese, but he was, we couldn't always understand what he was saying, and he's so insightful. And one day he was so overwhelmed with Bhutan, he suddenly burst out. He said, it's so simple. It's so simple. What makes us happy is when we make another happy. What makes us happy is when we make nature happy. What makes us happy is when we make God happy. Then we are happy. And that lined up exactly too. So we also had the privilege to meet with Dr. Karma Ura, who was the main thought leader behind the GNH indicators that they've developed. And he talks about the new systems indicators that we have today require new leadership capacities for going forward. And what he says is that they require us to shift from a focus on our own benefit to a realization that we need to benefit all, including me to we, ego to eco. And he said that those 3 leadership capacities that we need for moving forward are 1, a knowledge of suffering, in other words, seeing the reality of what's painful. 2, courage, strength, in other words, strength to stand for humanity. And 3, altruism or other concern. And he said otherwise strength is dangerous. And I heard this as this little picture. She's aware of the suffering. She's feeling the pain, yet she's got the courage to stand open to each other. At least she hasn't yet built the walls to each other. And he said all of this can be cultivated through practice, which is exactly what Nipun just said. We have been in this community talking about local first for the last 11 years. We coined the term local first at the first BALLE conference. This is our 11th annual BALLE conference. I've been talking about this forever. My name's on that how-to manual from 2004. And I would ask that we would consider at this point a shift to love first, to nurturing that. There's that seed. This is a quote from Judy. It's hard to fit all into one page, but this was at the very beginning of BALLE's founding. At its heart, our movement is about love. It's the power of love that will help us overcome fear in the hard days ahead as we confront the effects of climate change and peak oil. Our love of place, our love of life give us the courage to protect what we care about most: children, communities, animals, nature, all of life on our beautiful planet Earth. And I would say for the entrepreneurs amongst us, our love of business. Business has been corrupted as an instrument of greed rather than used to serve the common good, yet we know that business is beautiful when we put our creativity, energy, and love into producing products and services that our community needs. So I'd like us to be even more explicit on this point and to consider a next stage of openness. To move from reciprocity, I'm going to do good things for my community, in turn I expect people to buy local, to actually just do good things for your community because you're doing good things for your community. To actually move just to generosity, just to delight others, giving towards your mission first. Like Nipun talks about, as an overflowing cup. I'm going to pour into all of your cups. Not with the expectation that you're going to pour right back into my cup, but I'm just going to pour them out. And the expectation is that the cups are going to be filled 6 times over somewhere else, and they're probably going to get refilled with me, but that's not why. I'm just going to keep pouring out my cup. I'd like us to practice being entrepreneurs in love. Entrepreneurs in love with Buffalo, entrepreneurs in love with Bellingham, entrepreneurs in love with Oakland. Giving wholeheartedly and joyfully to that which we seek without expectation of any return. To delight others, to delight nature, to delight our highest self. These are just a few examples. This was a caterer here in Oakland, these 2 women who recently catered a staff retreat for us. I just thought it was a beautiful shift for her. She brought us a contract that said, this is your nourishment contract. And then she thought about the kinds of food that we would want to eat by reading about us online. What would these people care about? And then she had prepared a blessing based on who she thought we were and what kind of meeting we were having, and she sang it to us while she served us our food. This next example, I was told a story about a manufacturer where some of the managers wanted to foster and nurture a feeling of generosity in their management team. So they started to bring them out to lunch and just buy lunch for the next table to see how that would feel. That's all. Just how would that feel if we bought lunch for the next table? Oh, that felt so good. That was a nice feeling. And then, because of that, some people were inspired and they realized that the people who were working on the factory floor didn't actually get health care benefits. And yet they were getting health care and cell phone reimbursement. So they decided to go around to all of the other managers and say, would you give up your cell phone reimbursement so we can buy those guys health care? And they all did. And then they bought them health care. And there was not an expectation of anything in return. And yet I heard, within 6 months, the waste on the factory floor was significantly down. The costs were down. It benefited them in the end, but that's not why they did it. It just felt good, and it was right, and it was actually more in line with who they are as humans. Nipun talked about Karma Kitchen. It's a beautiful model. James Johnson Pyatt, one of the BALLE Local Economy Fellows, he helps businesses in underserved communities, and he says that the shift always happens when he sees them move from ambition to love. When it shifts to just, I want to serve this community, that's when the shift really happens and they really start to thrive. I put this picture down here of Judy with the goat's ears. I think that's something you could do. You could say, I want to give toward love. Yes, I'm going to make a commitment to buy cheese from a farmer who kisses her goat's ears because I want more of that in the world. That's a good thing. I'm going to make that choice. Maybe you're not going to do it every day. Maybe you're going to do it once a week. You're going to make a choice around buying cheese from the farmer that kisses her goat's ears because you want more loved goats in the world. You know, just like what do you want more of? Or can we, like Maggie talked about at last year's conference, buy from black-owned businesses. There's 3 black-owned grocery stores in the entire United States of America, and that's absolutely wrong. So buy from black-owned businesses. Make a choice. Where do I want it? What do I want to see grow in the world? Put your attention there. Maybe give where you feel tight. Eileen Fisher, who's here in the audience, says that she like Judy, has gone to others in her industry to try to say to them, choose these suppliers. Look what they're doing environmentally. Look what they're doing for people. And they kind of look at her like she's crazy. You would tell me your trade secrets and your suppliers? But really, I want to see this grow. And then she thrives. She does better and better. And Judy, same thing. As she told all her competitors how to do exactly what she was doing to be more sustainable, she thrived. She grew. They grew. They grew more. The pie got bigger. We hear about this from RSF, Social Finance, and how they do their pricing meetings where they bring the borrowers and then the lenders together and set interest rates together. They just trust. What if we bring you together, we make it all open, and we trust that this is going to work out? And it does work out. And then G Diapers, Jason is here. He was so inspired by those pricing meetings that he is also bringing investors to really understand with him on a deep learning journey, I think to South America, to talk about what they're trying to do actually to eliminate disposable diapers in this world. There are bigger businesses doing this. We're going to have a session this afternoon. Etsy is now one of the first businesses I know to measure their performance by G&H. Eileen Fisher, like I already mentioned, but it's going to require a lot more of that. It's going to require all of us. We need large numbers, great numbers of businesses acting from love first. And I want to be clear that this isn't frivolous. Okay, I'm trying to say this. We need to build leadership capacities in our communities to meet the emerging future. We need to build leadership capacities in our communities to meet the emerging future. That means we have to build great numbers of businesses who are aligned with their highest aspect of their humanity and who are open to each other. And we can do that. This community has done this. We know how to change culture. We know how to build new norms. You guys have made local first the norm. Local food, green jobs, green building, zero waste, prosperity for all, crowdsource funding. These are things that you have seeded in your communities and you've grown, and you know how to put a spotlight on who's doing what, how to grow that aspect. We can grow this aspect, and thank you. I'm worse than usual, you guys. These are our local economy fellows so far. And in the first class of fellows that we had, one commonality we found was they had almost all, led a protest sometime in elementary school. So these are people who stand for justice, stand for truth their whole life. And you can stand for this. You are strong. You are leaders. You can do this. And, nobody else can do this as well as you. And Toby, for instance, and Nikki, I put up here, I don't have time, they're telling me, so I'm not going to read Toby's quote. Sorry, Toby. But Nikki, I'm going to read your quote. In the applications to become local economy fellows, they get this. And so Nikki said, one of the reasons she wanted to become a fellow, I seek training and practice in the art of acting with love, grace, and compassion, which is something that I think needs to be central to conversations about resource distribution and the movement of goods. Nikki can do this in her community with support, with all of us putting attention here. That means the capacity to, again, stand in the face of pain, stand in the face of economic downturn, stand in the face of climate change, heartbreaking, wide open, afraid, but not closing to each other. Trying to make others happy, trying to make nature happy, trying to make our highest selves happy. It means choosing to perceive a connected and loving world and thereby creating it. And it means rediscovering meaning and true happiness at the same time. So, I've got to get off the stage. But I want to say I'm here with you. I will do this with you. I will come to any of your communities. I will do this with you. This is what we need to do. And I also want to introduce the next guy who's coming up. Who is, I met Mark at a conference. I heard him speak, and I just went up afterwards and I said, you have to come to BALLE. And he said to me, yeah, we were just eye to eye. Yes, I will come to BALLE. I don't even know what BALLE is. I will come to BALLE. And this is not fake Photoshop. This is the tattoo on his hand, LOVE. So thank you.
She made me cry. She did that. She always does that. I know what BALLE is now, by the way, and I really like it, so. You guys are pretty great. My name is Mark Brand. I'm not from Vancouver, but I choose to live there and trying to impact the community there as much as possible. I met Michelle at Social Venture Institute, a smaller branch of SVN. And for those of you unfamiliar with it, go by any means necessary, get there. It changed my life. I went kicking and screaming, it should be noted. I was never intending to do any of this. Excuse my trembles as well. I get the shakes when I talk. I was never intending to do any of this. It sort of found me. And I'm a restaurateur by trade. I started my first restaurant named after my mom, Benita, in 2007. That's where you say, aw, that's sweet. Thank you. The next cues will be easier, I promise. I started my first restaurant with $89,000 and 2 partners and sweat equity. And we worked really, really hard to build something beautiful in a neighborhood that wasn't so beautiful, like many of you live in or been or visited. My neighborhood's called Gastown, or the downtown east side. But a show of hands, can anybody show me if you know it, you've been? Okay, this is going to be an easier audience than I thought. So the downtown east side has one of the largest concentration of poor, drug-addicted, open-air drug market. It's hell on earth for a lot of people, and I love it. I love it because it struggles so hard to beat that back. It works against it, but it's also a reminder to everybody how difficult this whole thing we do is. So I wanted to put my restaurant there, fine dining restaurant, because foot traffic would be awesome. See, you got that one. I told you they get easier. And I was immediately affected by the community there and the people who were on the street. I'll tell this one story of a gentleman by the name of Rusty. That's his real name, he swears. And I was outside of the restaurant, and I was trying to refinish some wood, some cedar that I'd reclaimed from inside the building. And I was pulling nails out, and Rusty walked by and stopped and just sort of stared at me, gave me the long. Said, "Hey, help you? Do I know you?" He's like, "No, but you certainly don't know what you're doing." Rusty is a Cape Bretoner. I love Nova Scotia, by the way. I'm going to get that out right now. Is a Cape Bretoner, and he came in and showed me how to do this properly and has worked with me every day since. So that's almost 8 years as a general caretaker and handyman. Rusty was living on welfare and assistance and just wanted a job. So that was my first spark. I was like, okay, I can't be judging these books by their cover. I can't. Thank God nobody does with me, right? You guys didn't judge me on the tattoos? Yeah, you did. It's okay, I'm a sweetheart. I'll get you, it's fine. So I opened a sushi restaurant after that, a cocktail bar, a clothing retailer, a gallery, because I'm an addicted entrepreneur. I love business. I have a voracious appetite for it and watching other people succeed in it. People who wouldn't likely get the chance to do so. That's what we all need to do, by the way. I'm just going to segue for 2 secs. Do that. You've all got friends who are incredibly talented, have a drive, a passion. Take a chance on them. Take a risk. Invest some of your time, your money, your effort into them, and I can tell you it pays off in spades. Do that. I'm going to get back to the story. So after opening all these businesses in this neighborhood, I realized that my impact was so small. It wasn't doing enough. We employed people who recycled bottles or washed our windows or swept the streets or anything I could find for folks to do to give them some dignity and work with me. But it wasn't many. I'm going to call it a dozen a year. That's not going to be enough to fix a neighborhood. So Save On Meats was closing. And Save On Meats, to give it some context, operated in the downtown east side as one of its main sources of food security for the people of low income, pensioners, drug addicted, people who live in SROs, 8x10 rooms, and it was shutting its doors. I knew Save On so well because I ate there a lot. And it had serviced the community for so long with not just food, but with hope. And I'm not being facetious there. It was one of the few places in the city where everybody could go, and everybody felt comfortable, and everybody could hang out. Drug addicted or not, cops, cons. And when I used to eat there, it was based out of monetary necessity. $3.99 burger, terrible burger, but it kept you fed. And I got completely infected by the previous owner, Al Delorier. Al ran the business after everybody else had left the neighborhood. Downtown had moved. And he ran it because he loved the people there, and he knew that they needed him. So I thought there was some ulterior motive. It's like, why is this guy doing this? So I asked him. I was like, why do you really do this? And we became really good friends really quick. Al wouldn't sell the business or the building to developers, although he stood to make a lot of money until somebody agreed to redo the butcher shop, or keep the butcher shop open, rather. So because I didn't have enough on my plate, I decided to take this 21,000 square foot beast and try and make some difference in our neighborhood. It's been open 2 years now. And what Save On Meats is now is a 82-seat diner, a butcher shop, a sandwich window, and an enterprise that's social. Not a social enterprise. Not just wordplay. Business needs to be able to sustain itself, to be charitable and charitable properly. I've seen the model of social enterprise not work dozens of times. Charities not work. Not a popular thing to say. Don't care. Funding goes in cycles. Governments change their mind. 4-year cycle ends, 50 jobs are lost because they don't like you now. That's not going to work. That's not going to keep us around. So I wanted to create a business that made money while helping people. Actually made money, and unabashedly. I want to have more money to do more with it. It's okay. It's okay to want to be a capitalist as well. Terrible room to say capitalist, isn't it? It's okay. So we started a meal program with a women's resource center called Atira. And one of my favorite women on the planet, Janice Abbott, the CEO there, makes no bones about being a tough ass. She came to me and she said, I'd like you, because you do good food, to make food for our hotels. So for clarity, she's got dozens of hotels with thousands of people in them of single room occupancy who are struggling. It's transitional housing. It's tough. So I said, okay, well, how much are you going to pay me to do this? And she said, well, we have X amount. So I can't make a meal for that. And she said, well, will you try? Nobody says no to Janice, if any of you have met her. So I did. So we started this meal program. We started a study at one of the hotels called the Gastown Hotel with 80 residents. Those residents struggle. And our first meal that we delivered was kale and chickpea salad. You know who doesn't want kale and chickpea salad? Not very popular. But I wanted to do something nutritious. I need to figure out how to feed people and feed them well, because they're going to get this one meal that day. And that one meal can change the way their day goes. Absolutely change the way it goes. You know what it's like to be hungry. It sucks. Now imagine being hungry with no options, on methadone, coming off of heroin. No. So we did the metrics. 3 months before we did it, 3 months after we did the meal program. And the one that stuck with me and continues to motivate me is this. So imagine there's a logbook in all of the SROs. What happened last night? Jim and John got in a fight. One kicked each other down the stairs, and then the ambulance came. All of those metrics were recorded 3 months before. 3 months after, 911 calls to the building were down 35%. From one meal a day. Do you know what it costs to send an ambulance out to a site? I think our governments are screwing it up. I think they're insane, actually. We got to figure this stuff out. From that, we now do 547 meals a day to 8 SROs. My goal is 1,500 by the end of this year, and doubling and tripling that with nothing but simple math in business, because that's how it works. I'm going to finish with one story. One of my best friends, Michael Haggerty, has also worked for me for 7 years. I met Mike from the neighborhood. I would see him out sweeping the streets, and truthfully, I was intimidated by him. He looked like an older, tougher Mick Jagger. See, you're scared too. And I used to see him doing push-ups in the street, like one-arm push-ups, I'm not joking, like working out on trees. And I'd never approached him because I wasn't sure what that would be like. My own fear, my ego wouldn't allow me to lose a discussion, which is a lot of time we don't enter discussions because we're scared that it's not going to go perfect. So I saw Mike, and it doesn't snow very often in Vancouver, but one of our snowy days, curled up on a piece of cardboard across the street from my house. And I said, fuck it, I'm going. So I went over, and I said, hey man, are you okay? And he's like, no, I'm not. I'm terrified. I don't know what he's going to do. If he's going to ignore me or whatever, like everything would have been a defeat. He said, no, I'm not okay. I was like, can we talk about that? He said, yes. So I took him into one of my restaurants and we sat down, and I got Mike's story. Mike had been living in an SRO and suffers from Asperger's syndrome. So everything is obsessive compulsive for him, and brought on by heroin addiction for over 30 years. So he got bed bugs in his room. Imagine that with Asperger's. Nightmare. So he left the room, and they said, when you're done fumigating, we'll figure it out. He has nowhere to go. So he went back to the SRO to pick up his belongings to find out that all of them had been incinerated. Everything. So not only his clothing, but more importantly to him, the pictures that he had of his daughter. The last thing that he said was holding him on. That's not okay. That's on my street, outside from me. That's one person out of thousands that are out there, right there. So Mike and I, well, Mike didn't get a choice in it. We got him housed, and he works next to me almost every day. He's not here with me tonight. Somebody's got to work. From 7 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. He's an inspiration to everybody in our business. I saw Mike 2 weeks ago sitting with his grandson. He's now reunited with his family at a local pub called Peck and Paw, great place, having a beer and something to eat on the corner with his son. It's like, hey, where's Chanel? Where's your daughter? It's like, she's in Victoria. Okay. So who's with you? He's like, nobody. Just me and him. Babysitting for the weekend. Incredible. You can make a change in somebody's life by them changing yours positively over and over again. And it's our duty to do this. We. All of us. So let's make each other a promise. I'm going to stop talking now. The cards say numbers on them. But let's promise each other right now that we're all going to do better by each other and by this planet. Promise? Thank you very much.
Oh my God. Thank you, Mark. Michelle asked us to lead with love, so let's do it. Mark, come on up. Janine, please come on up. Judy, Nipun, Michelle. This morning, was a journey from me to we. And these incredible people are on this journey with us. They inspired us, they're pushing us, they're reminding us that we are better together. Let's show them some love. Thank you. Thank you. The crying fest continues. So we're closing out this morning's vision session. I want to let you know that at 11:45, Otto Scharmer is having a book signing and selling his new book, Leading from the Emerging Future, from Ego System to Ecosystem, in the expo downstairs. And I want to encourage you to go to the expo and see some of the incredible exhibitors and our sponsors and people who have products and services that are helping to support this community as well as many others. Judy's book will be sold tonight as well at the evening event, location pending, based on this lovely rain. Thank you all for being here. Thank you to our incredible speakers. You now have some time before lunch is served. I'm going to ask you to please feel free to go out of the room so we can set up for lunch. Thank you all so much, and we'll see you back here at around noon.